So,
Well, Bettina, you're modest. I mean, besides being such a nice person, you're modest.
she said, I'm not good at this, John. I said, I know, you're good at selling condos. I'm a game show host. You sell condos. So with that, I've surrounded myself with people who really know how to sell high-end condos. Bettina is representing The View currently, and Rita and Bonnie are selling the Gramercy in New Canaan and the
42nd Forest.
Okay, 42nd Forest, the Gramercy, and
Heritage Square.
All right, see, thank you. So, I mean, she's killing it this year. And Kim, are you selling? Kim, raise your hand, say hi.
Kim here. Yes.
You're in.
Oh, hi, Kim.
Hi.
We love Kim.
I love all you guys. Yeah, we all work together really well.
And you're selling Bankside House, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm representing David Waldman and Urbane.
Can you see it? Can you see it on the screen, Bankside House?
How cool is that?
That is so cool. I mean,
cool. I mean, does it get any cooler than that? I don't think so.
Well, I don't know.
No.
So Kim, you're in Westport. Bettina, you're in New Canaan.
Yes.
Rita, you're where?
Bonnie and Rita, we're in New Canaan as well.
Okay. I'm in Manhattan. That's why I have to.
Well, you have got to come out to New Canaan and to Westport and see that we have as you have fabulous things in the city, which we know, but we have some nice things out here.
I'm sure. I'm just a city boy.
You're a city boy. You're in a pretty swanky apartment there.
Oh, yeah, that's all my wife, but I just live here.
Anybody who's ever seen this show knows that pretty much all 38 episodes start with somebody pointing out Roberto's apartment, saying, what a fabulous apartment. Where is that apartment? And some agents have been on the show who've actually tried to sell it out from under Roberto.
True.
Hey, Roberto, you have no clutter.
The cleaning lady was here today.
Okay. Yes.
It's 4:05. I'm very excited. I have 3 outstanding builders of condos. I have 3 or 4 outstanding sellers of the ultra luxury condos. So with that, let's begin. This is episode 38 of Boroughs and Burbs. We've done this, we believe it, Roberto, 38 times.
Incredible.
Hopefully we're getting the hang of this by now. And I'm going to say that the genesis of this show was a conversation with Rita last week when I said to her, how's it going down there on Forest? And she said, I not only had my luxury condo sold once at $3.7 million asking price, but I had somebody behind them ready to buy it. And I said, well, is that just a one-off thing, or is this a new trend? And Bonnie was able to share with me, oh no, we've got plenty of interest in the Forest Street townhouses and over at the Gramercy. So let me start with Rita and Bonnie, and why don't you tell them what you told me that inspired the show?
Well, you know, it's so interesting because one could say that the pandemic has really created a focus on condominiums, and Bonnie and I have talked about that. But it's more complicated than that. The profile of the buyers that we're seeing in all 3 locations primarily are wealthy or ultra wealthy downsizers. Having said that, we have one of our condos that have sold to a young professional. Well, they're in their, that's young, 40s. It's very young, with 2 children. But most of our very successful potential buyers and buyers are looking to have sold their larger house, are considering it, and they are the owners of multiple homes. And we have yet to have anyone come forth without it being an all cash offer. And so what we've seen is this has been going on since, actually, and it'd be interesting to hear Bettina's take on it as well. We've seen this profile, the strong profile, since we've been able to offer new condominiums. We have not had that opportunity until these three developers who are guests today arrived on the scene. And people, the very well-heeled buyers, there are things that are very important to them. And Bonnie, don't hesitate to jump in. They want exclusivity. They would prefer something that is in every dimension in terms of architecture, in terms of high-end finishes. And high-end doesn't mean that you have a nice stone. You have an uncommon stone. They want to see architectural value, and they know the difference. I mean, it's interesting because we have all sold lovely, beautiful houses in this community, and some of them are not inspiring architecturally, but they sell. These buyers know the difference. And they pointed out, for example, at 42nd Forest, one of the most amazing things was a very respected architect. I think all of you who are an audience here know him. He's really the dean of classical architects, and that's Dean Yarwadia. He comes to 42nd Forest, and I know we all respect him. And he said, this is a welcome addition to the New Canaan landscape. And
No higher praise. No higher praise.
Really? Right. It was so wonderful. And, you know, Bruce Breinfield is the architect there who we all admire and we like as a human being, and he's talented. But when Dean Yar stopped by and said that said something. That's not lost on buyers. Heritage Square, you talk about exclusivity. We weren't even able to market that. We had no ability, and we were fine with that because I should say, that we were surprised when the owners said, this cannot be in the public domain.
Yeah, we have ability, but they wanted to keep it off the internet.
Yeah. So, but guess what? Those exclusive buyers, and we had, as you know, I mentioned a backup, and we have two more who wanted it, but they were late to come. They didn't see this anywhere. The brokers in this tier know their buyer's taste, and they are looking for those jewels. And it didn't take long. And in the first week, we had the family that bought this. So what else are they looking? They're looking for exclusivity. They're looking for quality of finishes, unusual finishes. They're looking for.
How about a pool?
Not in condo. Well, you may be in the bigger condos.
How about a roof deck?
Yeah, a roof
Yes.
deck. They love that.
Private outdoor space. Also, what we're seeing a lot of is these people who are coming have multiple homes. So they want to keep a townhouse in New Canaan or a condo in New Canaan because they want a foothold here to be near their children or near their friends. So they don't really care about the pool. They want to know that there's a generator, that they can lock the door and leave, and everything's taken care of. An elevator is important to them. Attached 2-car garage. You know, amazing closets is important. They want to know that there's gorgeous closet systems. A lot of these people, especially the spouses who are coming, have, you know, lots of clothes, and the first thing they do is walk into the closet and say, will this work? This won't work. That's been a huge selling point.
I think you forgot one most important amenity.
We're not there yet. We haven't finished.
Okay.
We haven't finished. How about location?
Yeah.
Location. They want to walk. And if they can walk to this town with the most amazing, I mean, John, you've lived here all your life. So you know that it used to be when Bonnie and I moved here, we'd go to Greenwich or Westport and Kim, right where, because those were the restaurants. Now fancy friends from Greenwich come to New Canaan and to Westport because we're a restaurant destination. We're a
It's
restaurant.
sort of waterfront for New Canaan. Since we don't have real waterfront, we call like Restaurant Row waterfront.
I like that.
In fact, the couple that bought 42 Forest, the first townhouse that sold, number 3, when they first closed, there was no natural gas yet on Forest Street. So they had, we had propane hooked up, so they had air conditioning, but they didn't have a stove. And the wife didn't care. We gave them a hot plate. She's like, this is great. And even when they got natural gas, she didn't want to tell her husband. And we would see them 3 times a day walking down Forest Street, going for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
And she had the biggest smile on her face. She loved it.
Like we were so happy when gas came. She was so upset.
It's
All right,
great.
I want to turn to Bettina and I want to ask her about the other big amenity. We heard that these are people who have multiple homes, and for the most part, they sold their big house and they're downsizing into a condo. But I did not hear the word grandchildren. So, Bettina, when you look across the 50 units that or 40 units that you have for sale, are they mostly looking for 1-bedrooms? Because that's all they need. After all, they're just a couple who want to be here in New Canaan. 2-bedroom, or do they start with the 3-bedroom units?
They have primarily all started with the 3-bedroom units. The larger units have been the most, the first to go. You know, people coming from their larger homes, they want the space. They like the open floor plans. The amenities that the View offers are, you know, that are phenomenal. You have your concierge services, you have your rooftop deck with fire pit, grills. You can host a party for 200 people up there. You can reserve it for private parties. There's a club room upstairs with a full catering kitchen, great lounge area. We have 2 state-of-the-art fitness centers with Peloton bikes, the Fit Mirrors. There's heated underground parking where there's a dog washing room. There's a car detailing station. Everything you could want is there. The idea is like a full service New York City living.
But they
where
want
art
3-bedroom. They want
Yes,
3-bedroom. It's just a couple. Who do they think they're going to host in the other 2 bedrooms?
You know, a lot of the people buying, they do have grandchildren. They want their grandchildren to come and stay with them. You know, guests, they want an office. They want to have the office space. And coming from these big homes, they want to still have that sense of, I mean, our 3 bedrooms were almost 3,000 square feet. We have 2 bedrooms with a den. We're almost 40% sold now. You know, people
Do you
just
go back to the builder and ask them to smash a few condos together? Every once in a while?
Well, we'll see about that. I mean, we still have a lot of activity in the 2 bedrooms and two bedrooms with a den. We have 1 1-bedroom. We have 1 4-bedroom available. I mean, other amenities include, like, there's a Zen garden. There's it's just a really lovely atmosphere. It's like a community within a community. We have fire pits and grilling stations, seating areas, a little playground there. It's anything anyone could want.
And the roof is common, or it's cut up into private spaces?
It's, well, everyone has their private balconies or terraces, but the roof deck, it's an expansive roof deck on both in each of the buildings. So each one has, and you know, they can use either one. So it's big and open space, and there's beautiful views of Mead Park, your sunsets. I like to tell the New Yorkers that come, these are our Central Park views in New Canaan, but people love the location and walk to town ability.
Parking. How much parking do they think they need when they're moving from their house and all that space, and they're downsizing? And I know they don't want to give up their closets. I know they don't want to give up their office. They're willing to give up a yard. How about parking? How much parking do they think they need when they're buying a super luxury condo at the $3.5 million level?
2 bedrooms, two garage spaces, which we provide. We also have electric car charging stations available, and there's also outdoor park. There's indoor garage parking, and there's plenty of guest parking.
I would second everything that Bettina said. Parking is really important, and but
At least 2.
At least 2, and in Heritage Square, there's more available. At Gramercy Park, there's more available. At the 42nd Forest, it's 2 cars attached, but that is important. They don't want to give up that, and we have guest parking and there's street parking, and but that outdoor space and the terrace, the 1,000 square foot, not terrace, but roof deck, has an amazing outdoor kitchen, and you're on the 3rd floor. and you look out, and it's, as Bettina, you were saying, that people go up there and they look around, and it's very special. You look over the village, and that captivates potential buyers. At Herald Square, there's I call it, Bonnie, I think, coined it. It's a magical garden. And no one, I mean, you talk about exclusive, very few people know about Heritage Square. It has it's not a roof garden. It's part of the central courtyard, elevated 2 stories. And it's a beautiful green garden with sitting benches and open, and you're above the Forest Street. It's really, the elevator opens and it's there, and you will, oh my, and it's a secret garden. Gramercy Park has a beautiful common garden, and it has a small gym, and it has fire pits, and it has an outdoor kitchen. And those outdoor spaces, when people are giving up a big house, they don't want to give it all up. And these places really do satisfy that. It's really, it's lovely.
Can I ask about parking? Because it's so essential. If someone does want a third spot, is it available? And how much does that cost?
Well, at Gramercy Park, at Herald Square, and at 42nd, there's guest parking, and it does not cost anything else. I will say at Herald Square, there's ample guest parking too, and that does not cost anything extra.
Tina, for you the same at the View?
Yes, at the View, we have over 20 spots on one side and about 5 or 6 on the other. So there's ample parking if you for guests, and if you had another car, they could park in the there as well.
Kim, Bankside House.
We
Tell
got
me-
everything.
Tell me what's different.
I would say in a nutshell, what is slightly different about Bankside House is that we are a smaller number of units, or only 12 total. Our units are larger on a square foot basis than the typical. Our 2-bedroom units are 2,500 square feet. Our 3 bedrooms are 3,300 square feet. All of our units have all 4 exposures, so there are no party walls, so no shared walls in the building, except for one in between the two 3-bedroom units. So you have views in all 4 directions, and I think very unique to Bankside House, as opposed to some of the other luxury condo developments, is really the town of Westport, because our main street happens to be on the Saugatuck River. We're not only walk to town, we have water views. So we have the double whammy. We're super high-end Roger Ferris design, talk about an architect who commands sort of people's attention. He is, he designs a level 5 product, which requires a level 5 build out.
I love that. Did you make that up? Level 5?
I think David Waldman made that up.
Can I start saying it that I'm selling level 5 stuff? Or is that like
You can only
copyright?
say it if it's true, John. You can only say it if it's true.
Hey, John, you have the king of level 5. I see Scott on this. Level 5 is a standard largely used in New York City.
That's good, thanks.
Or in a Hobbs project.
Are you building level 5 on it?
On custom homes, yes. On multi-family units, I'm going to say it's clearly a 4. 5 is very hard and very expensive to attain. You're taking your sheetrock walls, you're plastering over the sheetrock to get a perfect finish.
Joe, are you building to level 5?
On several builds, yes. Like the one in Hemlock, that's $18 million, yes. That's level 5 without a question.
How much do I have
Maybe
to
level
spend?
6.
How much do I have to spend per foot? Now, we've been talking about condos that I believe are $1,500 to $2,500 per foot. luxury condos. That's how I've been defining them. Typically over $3 million for these condos. How much do I have to spend on a per foot to get level 5 quality? Now that I know what level 5 is, I want level 5. I could not live in level 4 and now that I know.
You're gonna go home tonight and check your walls.
John, it depends. I think it depends a lot on sort of the cost of the property, right? The land is the biggest component, the hardest component to come by. We will, I think, all agree in any of these developments. So the price of our property, let alone the availability of it, has just changed substantially. So, you know, Bankside House is a project that's been in the works for the last 6 years. And I guess the developer was fortuitous in that, you know, the land ended up being, you know, a smaller component to the overall price of the project. So we can deliver a higher, you know, finished product at a more reasonable price. And, you know, Westport, our units are in the $1,400-$1,500 a square foot range, and we're delivering a product that is, you know, worth that and more, we believe. And I think that the market is agreeing to it. It's really.
Can we just get a little history, because it's really, it all starts at the land. And I'm just curious if someone, maybe Arnold or Joe or somebody, can give me a little like 1-minute history of what has happened to land prices in the last 5 to 7 years, and how was it affected by COVID, and what sort of pricing are you seeing now, you know, and what trajectory you think it's going, just to kind of to underpin everything we're going to talk about.
I mean, the land prices in the past 2 years have definitely gone up more than 50% throughout Fairfield County, I would say. I was actually just in Naples yesterday, and they saw a 40% increase last year in land prices. Wow. So now, you know, I don't think around here in Fairfield County, I think we'll see a leveling out. But the issue is it's very difficult to find any type of property that you can develop. That's what we're seeing in the marketplace.
Roberto, for a multifamily, it's not really the land cost, it is the approval cost. So in my project at the View, we spent 2 years and $2 million to get that approved. So
did you have to piece that together? I mean, that seems like a pretty nice piece of property, like really close to town.
That happened to be a piece that was put together and had actually stayed together through family ownership, not my family, but a prior owner, for multi-generation.
And you acquired that when?
2013. Yeah, 6 years ago.
So he's talking about this one.
So what, if you paid X for that, 2016, it's X plus what now, if that was to be available?
Well, it's developed, right? So it's hard to extract the land from it. But what would it be? A 3-acre lot in New Canaan? It's really just not available right now, especially close to downtown. I would agree with Arnold that the approvals are the biggest, are one of the biggest soft cost things, or the wild card, right? If you come in with a project that is unique and creative, and the town is, you know, maybe a little resistant to that, if they're seeking change, then it's going to be an easier path, right? We had a harder path, and that certainly adds to the soft costs, and that gets passed on to the, you know, to the end user, of course. So
yeah. In some ways, you guys are pioneers in this. This is a new concept, so you guys are kind of laying the framework and having some sort of precedent as to how it's going to price out, because that was a real risk, a calculated risk, not knowing what you were looking at the end, cost-wise.
We had the idea that, you know, that there was not enough housing diversity in these small towns, and in our town, New Canaan particularly, right? So it was identified. We kept hearing from people over and over that, you know, you had empty nesters looking for something in town. It just didn't exist. You know, we have 5% single family home. You know, they didn't need 4 acres and, 8,000 square feet, right? They were looking, so they wound up, moving out of town. So we kept hearing that over and over and over. And then other people looking to transition in, for rentals, and it just didn't exist. So we kind of did a hybrid approach of rentals and sales. And it's, our theory tested out, right? It's been proven. There's a demonstrated need. We filled up the rentals and, in record time, way ahead of projections, and we're way ahead in our sales projections. So, and we see it playing out elsewhere in town, see like on Forest Street, but, in other towns as well, right? It's a demonstrated need, and it's out there. And it's just really, I think one of the biggest tasks as a developer is trying to get the approvals and the town to understand that there's a need and be flexible and work with the developers for smart, intelligent, strategic growth on this, because it slows the process down, and a lot of it is just needless. It's what these towns need, and it's just takes some convincing and dollars to do it.
With that,
We don't
John,
provide what people want, Roberto. They find it they try to find it in another community. So, there's a lot of push in lower Fairfield County from people who've owned larger homes, who say, I either own a second residence or I'm moving back because I have children/grandchildren, ease of commute from most of these communities. While that hasn't been a big issue, we've sold 1 or 2 units at the View to people who have children in New York and Boston. They can go either way, sort of from this area. But the difficulty is, we were lucky we had 225 people on a waiting list before we broke ground. So there's certainly the demand for this product. It's hard to get our town fathers to understand that, if you want to keep your people who are 55 and older in the community, and they're great residents because usually there's no school burden, they have disposable income, but they want something that is turnkey. They don't want the maintenance. They like heated garages. They like extra space. The question of, why do people need 3 bedrooms? Why do people need 8,000 square feet? Part of it is you don't need any of this. This becomes a series of wants. And, if it's us, Rita, Kim, or any of the builders, it's to try to find and be able to provide what people want.
so from the demand perspective, the demand is there, right? So just out of curiosity, what is the percentage of condos in the housing stock? Like in New York is a crazy place in the sense that 70% of the housing stock is rental property. Of the 30% that's left, 60% of it is co-op. So your percentage of condos is very small. There, I would imagine it's even smaller because this is a new entity in some way.
10% of New Canaan, the 7,000 houses, the 700 condos, roughly. What is it, Kim, in Westport, or Joe?
In Westport, it is 17 condos. And
17.
I think he's saying in.
You're talking
total,
in-
yeah.
17 actively listed condos and 70 actively listed houses.
What part of the
I-
condos does it make up of the housing stock? Is it
And
10%?
of the stock, I would say it's probably 5%, if that.
Yeah, that's
We
what I
have
said.
10,000 homes, including condos, 9,000.
So Roberto, when we went to build the View, one of the things when we were getting approvals were all the other condo owners who came out and said, oh, we don't need more condos in town. Our product was different in that it was single floor living. But condo prices rose. I believe they would have risen even without the pandemic, because you have many more people who are, I use the term, aging out of their large home. But we heard panic from people who own condos. You're going to devalue mine. Yes, if you own something that is 30 years old, you're not going to get the same price that you get on a new product. Now, if it's a 30-year-old condo that's been updated, you are going to get a premium price because, again, our buyers have been people who don't really want to do anything. They'd like to move in. They're glad that the kitchen's been selected. they can move in on a timely fashion, we're completed. And that's a big box for them to check off.
Scott, does Scott do any renovations on old condos?
Sure.
No, sorry, I just went ahead and went from unmute to mute. We do occasionally do some. Certainly in the city we do some. We're doing a reasonable amount, like in Hoboken, but in New Canaan, no. Greenwich, yes. One in Stamford and like one in Westport.
Would it be a calculated thing to do? Is that a big value add, or is that money you would put into an old condo that you're really not going to get back?
Well, I would say, actually, we have done a couple of like fit ups in like Pride's Crossing, which is a place in New Canaan that's right near town, and was toward the top of the end, before the top of the market, before the new round of condos, and putting in like an elevator or some stuff like that makes sense, but really tripping them out doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, there's some updating that does, and otherwise it doesn't. And a lot of the owners tend to be elderly, and how much of a much nicer kitchen do you need if you're in your 80s? I mean,
Roberto, right now in New Canaan, there's probably 30 condos for sale. And when you look at the 3-bedroom condos, there are 0 to 1 of used condos, 3-bedroom used condos. So there's, and sometimes 0, sometimes there's 1, and they may sell for $1 million to $1.3 million, $1.4 million. The new stock, the new development, 3-bedroom condos start at 1.8.
Are they bigger?
Go to 3.5.
Are they typically bigger in concept, though? Also,
Not necessarily.
Bettina, how are they different? How is it different from the 3-bedroom condo at Pride's Crossing, which is a nice 1975 brick townhouse of 2,500 feet, or 2,000 feet, 2,500 feet? How's that different from your $1.8 million condo at The View? How are they different?
Well, the primary difference is at The View, it's single floor living. And everything is, of course, brand new, the highest of quality. You have the high ceilings, in our full service building. You lock the door and you go. It's just ease of living. But primarily it's that single floor, easy access, the outdoor space. But they all have fireplaces, all have outdoor space, and then all the amenities that you have.
Also attached garages. Most of Pride's Crossing, they don't have an attached garage.
Exactly.
I think when Arnold was identifying and talking about understanding that the demographics said that we have a growing number of residents, local and from Westchester, because we draw from the city, some, but mostly from Westchester and Lower Fairfield County, that yes, they were more coming onto the market, more of those potential buyers, but there was not one new construction condominium in New Canaan. And that was a huge draw, and has been a huge draw, because they could come to New Canaan, and they're very nice condos. And Roberta, you may or may not know this, and perhaps you'll forgive me, John, if you've covered this in an earlier blog, but New Canaan was the very first community in Fairfield County that started condominiums. We have more complexes. Doesn't mean that we have more absolute numbers, but we started it because it was identified that people were downsizing and they were looking for small houses, and there weren't enough small houses. And it opened doors that most of the condominiums here, as John indicated, for Pride's Crossing, started in the mid-70s, but there hasn't been anything built in the last 20 years. So it was all the things that Bonnie's spoken of, Bettina has spoken about.
I think that's key. I want to come back to that. Why did we start building condos in 1968? And we were first, and we started building them. And about 1970, 10 years later, we stopped building condos. Why did we stop building condos? Was it a zoning issue? Was there no demand? Were they too expensive? What was the issue? Why did we stop building condos?
Very good question.
And start back up now?
Yeah,
John, I can give you an answer, which was, our town fathers decided that 1,500 square foot condos was the size of a condo. So we sort of hurt ourselves when we limited the size of the unit. Most people, again, you have to provide what people want. And once the zoning regulation of 1,500 square feet came in, that's what turned off a lot of people to that type of home ownership.
Roberto, does 1,500 feet sound small to you?
No, but it's city living. We're stacked on top of each other. It's like-
Yeah. Most of
love
Roberto's
it.
clients aren't going from 8,000 square feet on the 23rd floor to 1,500 on the 27th floor.
And
All right,
John,
Joe.
I think they ran out of room, big enough lots to do that, right? So if you run out of big enough lots, you wind up with smaller single family homes, right? Whether you're townhouses or single floor living, which really doesn't exist or hadn't existed. And I think that's another big reason why they didn't. And the town was less amenable to allowing multifamily developments. So we had a shortage of that kind of product.
Joe, are you with us? You want to tell me about the mill in Westport?
Let me unmute myself. How are you?
crap.
All right, so what's different about the mill? We already saw Bankside. Bankside's level 5. Did you note that? Level 5 development. Tell me about the mill. Why
Let me
are
give you a little background on the mill. The mill is much more like a Four Seasons boutique hotel. The mill was kind of like created out of I spent the past 4 summers before COVID in traveling through Europe and staying in some boutique hotels, and the mill was sort of a references all the amenities and the features that all those boutique hotels have. I wound up hiring an architect out of Montreal. I stayed in the Four Seasons up there in Montreal, and I hired the architect who worked with Bruce Beinfield as a local architect. His name was Phil Hazen, and he has done several Four Seasons in his career. So it's really got that more European boutique hotel feeling.
Is there really a bar in the lobby?
There's a cafe in the lobby, which is really dedicated just to the residences. It's got a 50-foot pool and a spa. There's 3 outdoor fireplaces that are all gas that'll be running, throughout the seasons. There's a garden area with pergolas, and there's heated garages, and there's an on-site. There's an apartment for an on-site concierge who's going to be 24/7, who will live on site.
Yes.
How much
So-
for one of these?
What's
How
the
much
unit
for a
and what's the
three-bedroom?
unit mix? And what's the unit mix of this?
The unit mix is mostly 2 bedrooms. There's 4 units that have 20-foot ceilings. So those are 2.5. They have a loft space for grandchildren or guests. And then there's 1 3-bedroom, and then there's 1 bedroom. But it's 29 2 bedrooms and then 2 other units. And so there's a total of 31.
This was a ground up construction. This was not a conversion of a building.
This is a conversion of an old candlewick mill that was first built in 1814.
This is one of the things I wanted to ask, because it seems to me that there's not a lot of opportunity to do that out there as much as there would be in the city, because there's so many old buildings. But this is very, very cool.
Yeah, this is a once in a lifetime for Fairfield County. You will not find, an 1814 mill building that's got, immense amount of history. Where we actually, the phases of the building the first part of the building was built in 1814. The second part was in 1890, and then the other part was built in 1920. And then we were able to take down some of the parts that were built in like 1960s. And we added another 30,000 square feet of new space. And that's what the new modern units are. So there's 7 new modern units, and then there's 24 vintage modern.
Arnold, are there buildings in New Canaan that you can do this to? Something like this?
Regrettably not. You would have to build new to sort of give it the old charm. But it's interesting that, you know, if I was going to build today, I'd be building larger units if I could get the approval. You're still getting 2 people, but everybody wants a home office.
Yeah.
When you're building these 2 and 3 and 4 bedroom units, they're not using bedrooms 2, 3, and 4. It's just additional space that gets turned into usually an office for him, an office for her. So the benefit to the town is that, you know, nobody with a family, I don't think anybody, unless then they could correct me, we haven't sold any of these larger units to people who are a young family.
Interesting.
It's really been people who came from a house who want the advantage of the space without the headache of home ownership.
Wow.
What about the rentals? Are families renting those?
Not really. I'd say we have 2 distinct demographics. Those people who've come back to New Canaan with baby in hand or in utero, whose parents live close by, and they, you know, like to start putting roots down. And the other big demographic are people 55 and older who've decided that they don't need to own, that they'd like to rent, and again are looking for a lot of space. We have not had, you know, the project we tore down had 18 or 19 school-age children. The project that we built has, I believe, 7 or 8 school-age children. Again, a lot more units, but of many less school-age children.
Kim, are these price-sensitive people? When you tell them the price, do they say, yeah, I didn't really want to spend that much?
I think everybody's price sensitive, John. I would say that they are, at least at Bankside House, there are people that have the financial wherewithal to pay these, you know, prices, and they also have the level of sophistication that allows them to sort of appreciate the product. I think one of the things that we have, one of the differences here is that we really started from the ground up and didn't have a product to sell. We were selling air in the beginning, and we did it very successfully. We now have, you know, a framed building and the ability to bring people to actually experience the space and the views which are outstanding. And, you know, so many of the things that have been discussed here today, I feel like we check so many of those boxes, including the fact that, you know, we may not have shared fireplaces, but we have private terraces. Almost every single unit has private outdoor space, varying from, let's call it 700 to 1,000 square feet, right? This is a roof deck. This is a private roof deck for the penthouses. Each penthouse has, you know, a 700 square foot private roof deck that has its own barbecue and fire pit, not shared. So it's a different buyer, I think, that is able to understand the level of construction and what this has to offer. Yes, we're 1 floor living. Yes, we have windows, floor to ceiling windows throughout, and parking and walk to town and waterfront. So we check a lot of the boxes, and price per square foot basis, we're super competitive. We just happen to be bigger. So, you know, our units are bigger, and the 2-bedroom units also have a den. So call it a den, call it an office, call it a 3rd bedroom if you want to. And our 3-bedroom units have a den. So there are potentially 4-bedroom units. So we have a lot of space. And that's the product that was designed, and we're seeing, we're seeing a desire for it. We have a ton of interest, and we're super excited to have something physical to show people once all the windows are in, which is something that is sort of happening as we speak. We'll have a launch party, and it will be fun because people will get to experience the building rather than just seeing the renderings, which is all we've kind of had up until now.
But when price sensitivity, do they say, well, okay, I really like what you're offering at $3 million, but I want to go see the product in New Canaan. I want to go look at Greenwich. I mean, are they willing to shop the entire county, and then they come back and then they say, okay, I like this, but I want to make these changes? Or do they say, I want to be on the water. I can't get that in New Canaan. I want to be on the water. I want this modern with the great amenities. I'll take it. Because there's not a lot of competition.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And I would say that the buyers that we are seeing are either Westport focused because they have children or grandchildren or both living locally in, the larger single family house. And this is not a primary residence for them. And they love Westport specifically. And I would say because of the whole period of COVID, the potential, commuting distance just kind of isn't an issue any longer. We're seeing, are they price sensitive? Again, to answer your question, of course they're price sensitive. We are creating a new market. This is not a market that has existed in Westport up until this point. So, you can't comp these out. You have to go out of town to comp these out. People have to get comfortable, and people are getting comfortable with the fact that we are creating a market. We are not, this is a new market. And whether or not a developer would ever be able to build something like this again is a question mark, because it comes down to what we discussed, the land, which is not available. Westport doesn't have you have to get a text amendment to change the designation of a property from, in all likelihood, commercial to condo.
But these builders have no problem asking for text amendments. You're asking for text amendments all the time, right, Arnold? Right, Joe?
That's the question.
But we're only getting them if the town perceives a need.
Right.
Okay.
Do we have a need? Do we have a need for more luxury condos?
By what we've experienced, the answer is yes. Just like we need more rentals, and we need more diversity in our housing. We're talking about the highest end of condos, but even on rentals, people want nice housing, and they're willing to spend money to have that either at the highest condo purchase end or on rental ends. The pandemic taught us that you might actually end up spending more time at home, and people sort of were very quick to define what they wanted. The first person who bought at the View was somebody who had literally looked at everything else that was being built in Fairfield and Westchester County. And I'm sure Kim's unit weren't built, and either were the other ones yet. But he did his due diligence, saw what we were building, and he was our first buyer, and we didn't have a price list yet. But walked through on a Saturday because he knew sort of what he wanted. They're very educated people who have an idea of what they want. It's for them finding it in these communities that forever have said, no new development or constrained development. Nobody's buying a 1-bedroom condo unless there's a price incentive to it.
Is the politics of getting, or the bureaucracy of achieving, to having them understand that there needs to be a different unit mix, there is demand, Is that a slippery slope? Is there resistance to that?
That's the hardest part. The easy part is building it, right? So just getting the approvals is the Herculean task, is what we've found. And to answer sort of direct towards John's comment, the text amendments happen because the regs are written, and this is, I think, for any P&Z regs, they're written to be to evolve. They're not meant to be static and fixed, right? They're meant to be guidelines, and they can evolve within frameworks, and that framework can even change over time, right? It's guided by the needs of the time, and it gives a vehicle for doing that. But yeah, approvals are the hardest part. We know how to build. It's just taking an idea and getting buy-in from the town.
But do you think you guys are making progress on that, on changing that mindset?
It won't change though, because we have to understand within all of Fairfield County, to be able to build these type of developments, there's no zoning that allows it. So you're doing a text change for every situation. And like Arnold said, and Paul, you're basically, and if you're putting out about, $1 million to $2 million on the table without knowing whether you get approved to be able to do this.
Joe, this is a perfect segue today, and I don't want to say too much unless you want to talk about it, but you talked about your excitement about acquiring a fabulous new piece of property, 10 acres. And I said, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to build, I think, 10 big, beautiful houses. So I have to ask, I agree with Arnold. The world, Westport, New Canaan, Fairfield County could demand more high-end condos.
100%.
Why aren't you asking for the text change? Why aren't you building condos on your big, beautiful land?
There's just a ton of resistance against it. I mean, the only places you really can do it in Westport are along the Post Road and an existing building that's over 10,000 square feet.
It's not because the demand's not there, and it's not because the economics are not there. You're saying that these town fathers, to use Arnold's word, are just too stuck in the past and they're not going to let you do it.
It's not even that they're not going to let you do it. There's no one really to make the decision to make the change. I mean, unless the zoning board went out and said, all right, we're going to change the zone across Westport. There's just really no one to do it. The first selectman's not going to take that stand.
Kim, is it easier? I mean, is he right? Should he want to build condos?
Look, I think that, yeah, I mean, Joe is right. I don't know other towns like I know Westport, but Westport seems to be very resistant to change in a nutshell, and change is inevitable. And I think that the only way for this to for Westport to change is for them to recognize the fact that this is what the people want, right? The people have to buy these things, and speak, and then that speaks volumes. I mean, you can't force builders to build what the people don't want. I know, pre-COVID, I represented a development of townhouses in Westport called Daybreak Commons, and the builder, I think, is on this podcast. He's my cousin, and he went through absolute hell to get approvals. He went through, the ringer, as did David, by the way, on Bankside House. They're so concerned. He ended up building a 55 and older development at Daybreak Commons because that's all he could get through. And yes, they restricted his square feet. It wasn't number of bedrooms, it was number of bedrooms and square feet. Couldn't go a foot over 2,000 because, God forbid, a child might live there. And then there would be another child in the school, and that's really, I think, where it all sort of unwinds. And the reality is there are no children living there. It's fully sold. We might have a child or two at Bankside House. It will be okay. And I think that's what it will be fine. There's another child in the school. It will be fine.
John, I will add to that. So when they went to build the project that Rita and Bonnie are selling, Paul and I both wrote in letters of, this fits into the community, this is housing we need. And, Paul got into, I don't want to call it a Twitter war, but with people in New Canaan who said, we don't need this type of housing. Change is very hard in these local communities. And we have to work to educate, because if you don't build it, you lose the core fabric of your community. And we have to be willing to let other people into the communities. I always like when I go to a planning and zoning meeting in any of these towns, and you speak, you've made your presentation, and there's always somebody who stands up and says, well, we don't need this. And, my first question is, do you live in town? And they say, yes. I said, well, you living in a house from the 1700s? And they say, no, I bought my house 5 years ago. There's a certain, geez, I got mine, now let's close the door and not let anybody in. But builders and developers have to support each other, because, I've seen my friendly competitors from Westport. I want them to do well, because it brings to all of these communities a group of people that we want, empty nesters who want housing that's just stacked on top of each other. Boy, that seems like a perfect solution to no more land in these communities.
Let me add to that. Maybe in a way it's a challenge, although I think there are hurdles. I see the sweet spot for tomorrow, Arnold and Joe and Paul in New Canaan, is that we need condominiums, new condominiums, for those buyers who come to look at the $2 and $3 million ones, because they're larger. I mean, our condominiums are 22, 32, and 3,700 square feet. And they would like to be able to pay under $2 million. I don't know if there's first, to identify land is a huge obstacle, but then to build so that those buyers who don't want to leave town, I think there's a parallel to what happened in the 1970s. They left town and they had to go further afield to find tiny houses. Well, we need not smaller condos. We're not talking about 1,500 or 2,000, Roberta. I thought that was a very good question, but we need that 2,500 square foot condo under $2 million, because there are buyers out there who pass on us. They love our product, but that's a stretch for them. And I don't know whether it's financially possible, but there is an appetite out there. We see it every single week as we take people through.
The issue there is the cost of the property and the cost to build.
Yeah.
Is
that a possibility, Joe? I mean, if you found the land, is it possible?
We have a mix. We have a mix of 1.5 to 2, and then 2 to 3 million. And we're seeing, you guys were talking about price sensitivity. There's definitely a group that are sensitive to price, that are buying the 1.5, the 1.6, 1.8. And then there's a group that's not sensitive to price, that have bought, the 2.8 to $3 million units.
But Joe, you have a potential home run, because when you were describing, and we came to see your mill, we drove by it, we walked around, we went, wow. And when we looked at those numbers that you're proposing to sell it, I would be very surprised, because that's what we don't have in New Canaan. I suggest that you were brilliant to price and somehow you made it happen. We don't have that yet.
Joe, are any of those sold?
We just started put it on publicly about a month ago, and there's 10 of them are sold out of the 31.
Not surprised at all.
Yeah.
Right.
But New Canaan is harder. I've been, I think we've all been looking for years, and the only buildings that exist are just a handful. The ones right near the train station have been gobbled up by some hedge funds lately, because they can pay $6 million for 10-story
building.
Yeah. So
I would love Cross Street, VD Street. There's land available there, but that's the area of town that needs a serious street facelift. And that's an area of town that maybe there could be parking and garages. And I'm not talking about high density, but if we could get something there, it would improve the character, the architecture, and there are people who want to buy.
But
So,
Rita, the numbers don't, and Paul will chime in, the numbers don't work. If
No.
I take the properties, you need density to create affordability, be it either in purchase or in rental.
Yes.
The day of somebody building a 2-story building, unless Joe or somebody else can figure out how to do it, we all need the density to amortize the purchase, the building costs that are up 20% in the last year. You know,
Right.
And the approval.
I'd love to build condos that were under $2 million. I can't find property for that. And if I did, by the time I got through planning and zoning, I'd probably be too old to build.
And Rita, with, if for $2 million or under 2 million, right, you have transaction costs, you have brokerage fees, conveyance tax and all that. So, but even at 2 million, even if you're retailing over 2 million for the builder to net 2 million for 2,500, that's 800 a square foot. And, with the approval costs, the land costs, and current escalating building materials and labor costs, I just don't see that as feasible. I think pre-COVID that would be a stretch. And yeah, you would need the density to do that. And
Paul, can you pencil out an example? For example, let's just say you have, I don't know, a 2-acre lot somewhere, ballpark cost per square foot, your approvals, like give me a sense of, can you stack that for me? Just curious.
it's really site specific. I think it's too hard to, to Roberta to reduce it to one. But I mean, right now we're retailing at the View, close to 1,200 a foot. And if we had to build it again, we would have to raise the prices because, the materials have escalated so much. So, even if you were to dial back the finishes and all that with the land, and again, the land is a big component, and of course the approvals, right? So if you're going to make it in a walkable place, which I just don't think you can replicate, at least not in New Canaan, at least not easily. It's because there just aren't for sale. I don't know how you'd get over that hump. I just don't see how you could make that affordable. You have to be farther outside of town. And then I think that would be just as difficult from an approval standpoint. And who would want to live out that far, right? Everyone wants to be downtown. One of the biggest amenities of the View is its walkability, not just to the downtown and everything it has to offer, but the parks as well, and to the train station. So that's huge, right? People don't want to be out on the 4-acre zoning on something big like that, at least not in New Canaan. At least that's what we found. So I see the numbers would have to work. And, I think, we've said this before, and Arnold just said it, we need the housing diversity to allow for that, Rita, and having something in town across street and Vitti Street, I just don't know how you can make that product even with that. It's just, the numbers just don't work.
Rita, my view is that once Vitti and Cross Street, and look, we built on Cross Street. I asked the town to allow me to build 4 stories. They gave me 3. But anything in the future is going to have density, i.e. height or width. And, that's what nobody wants unless they're looking for a place to live.
Scott Hobbs, as you're on the housing authority you head the housing authority and Arnold's on that committee, and you're struggling also to find sites, not only for the luxury condo that we've been talking about today, but for the affordable. I mean, are you finding the same thing that we've got to build 4-story buildings, great density? We've got to be willing as a community to build 4-story buildings with high density in order to meet the demand for condo product at all levels.
Yeah, it's, Arnold was extremely helpful on the board in converting Canaan Parish from the old spread out condo model or apartment model with the little townhouses to the much more modern structure that we have on 123 in New Canaan. And by being able to go ahead and get this density, get the extra stories, deal with the parking, we end up with a lot of green space. Now, the only reason this development worked is because really we had the land free. I mean, with the land free and with the help under the government paying market rates for the rent, then we can make this deal work and allow people to have affordable housing. I mean, if we had to go ahead and buy the land and then had to be at the affordable rents and the much lower rents, math gets in the way. It just, you can't, it becomes really difficult. And that's when they end up giving subsidies for affordable housing. But then they also layer on more regulation, which makes it more expensive to build and operate. So people, why don't we have affordable housing? It's like, well, essentially ban it. And then we make a whole bunch of rules to attempt to change the banning, which just makes everything else more expensive and more confusing. And again, it's not surprising why we don't.
So Roberto
That's
will
why we're talking.
appreciate this one. New York City had that apartment building that several people, numerous people lost their lives in. And what's the legislation? That all the buildings must be retrofit with a sprinkler system. That is billions of dollars for these buildings. In many cases, they'll never be able to accomplish that. So the solution always is, if we put more regulation in, it will be safer and better, but you make it so that it's not affordable for the people who actually need it.
The solution is come on out to Connecticut, because Arnold and Joe, David are building condos for you, and you don't have to stay in your unsprinklered building in Manhattan.
Here,
Kim,
here,
you had something?
here. Well said.
Kim?
I agree with that.
Okay, Roberto, did any of this make sense to you?
This is really almost one of my absolute favorite shows, because I think every single one of those properties sounds amazing. I think what's going on out there is incredible. I can only imagine that some of these community boards say, here comes Arnold again. He's going to ask for some special treatment, and same with Joe, it's been amazing. I learned so much. So I'm very happy that everybody participated, and thanks for being here, really.
Did we convince you to give up your pre-war condo with the arched windows and come on out for that concierge service, the 2 parking spaces, the roof deck, views over the Saugatuck or the village of New Canaan? Did we convince you? But you have school-age kids, and you're not really our target now, are we?
Not yet, but I'm going to be talking about it to a lot of people. Like, it's really nice up there. There's a lot to offer.
It's like the 4 seasons. Did you hear that from Joe?
Yeah, I heard that.
He went to the 4 seasons. Like, I can do this. We can do this.
I'm going on vacation with Joe next.
I know. I'm thinking to myself, I go to the Days Inn, and he goes to the 4 Seasons. Says,
Arnold, I just got back from Naples yesterday. It's there's a 4 Seasons going up there, and it's been on sale for 30 days, and there's, I think, I don't know, 80 units or something, and they're selling for an average of $1,700, 17 million a unit.
I've been following the same thing, but John, the other thing is, if over our careers, and I'll use Joe and myself and other builders, if I made what people told me I made, I would have Florida behind me. You'd be looking out at my very expensive waterfront house. The truth of the matter is, when you get done with these projects, we had somebody stand up in New Canaan when we were trying to get the view approved, who said, and Mr. Karp is going to make X millions of dollars. I looked at Paul and said, sell him the project. They're not always as lucrative. You take on a lot of bank financing, you take an unbelievable amount of risk. Okay, when they work out, everybody says, oh, I always knew you, but I was on a phone call, and I believe you were on it this week, where somebody said, you're lucky the pandemic hit. And I had to explain to them that the people we're renting and selling to are not pandemic people. These are people who wanted to be in town. I think the pandemic certainly helped, but these were people who are from the communities. So, it's a very easy business unless you make mistakes along the way. As I said, we've had houses that we've built that I haven't been able to sell for 5 years. Nobody counts the math on the holding cost of those. And Bettina then calls me weekly and says, well, if you reduce the price, I go, I'm already going to the closing with a checkbook.
Michael Goldenberg, conclude the show for us. You are one of the wise men in Manhattan. What did you learn today from all of this? You've got no dog in this fight.
I'm moving to Westport or New Canaan. I need a fourth residence. 3 of them are just not enough.
As he says that from Florida.
No.
But he is our wealthy target. He is our wealthy west side of Manhattan, dyed in the wool New Yorker. And if we can convince Michael, we might have something here.
Michael, come and we'll take you to lunch. We'll stroll downtown and you will be seduced by the beauty of this village.
I've been seduced by Arnold, by Paul, and by Joe.
Well, give us a chance.
They know their product and they know what they're doing. And I love that. I loved all three of them, but the Mill is really very interesting. You know, that's a New York product. You know, you're looking at Tribeca when you're looking at a building like that. So
Give me a call. We'll give you a tour.
Thank you. I just may take you up on that when I come back up north.
Michael, I'd love to see you too. My former manager.
Great to see you. Thank you, John.
Thank you all. I think this is a great show. I think we had a lot to say from a lot of people, and then we had a lot of product to go through, but I think somehow it all made sense. I think it makes sense why the ultra luxury product is selling across Connecticut, across Fairfield County. What's difficult about buying it? I understand something about the demand, who's buying it, why they're buying it, and why I see some diversity between the Bankside and the Mill and the View and 42 Forest. So thank you all for a great show. And I'll see you again next week when we're going to go back to New York. Right, Roberto?
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank
See you
you.
guys. Thanks for being here.
Bye. Thank you.
Skipper.